If you played the Mirai storyline in WWE 2K23, you'll probably remember the scene where your character is washed up and unemployed, and takes work doing motion capture for a WWE video game. While this is kind of meta, since you're performing moves for motion capture that were themselves motion captured, it's also a bit of an inside joke, as mocap is generally done by a lot of indie wrestlers, some who even work for other promotions. With last year's game plus a little bit more out now, don't at me, I've played every single wrestling game since WWF Warzone. I thought I'd look for some interesting stories about wrestlers working on WWE games. Some you might know already, but there may be something you didn't. Number 1. LA Knight. I'm starting with the one you most likely know already, but do you know exactly how much work LA Knight has put into 2K games? It might not sound surprising to hear of a current WWE star doing mocap for a game, but the former Eli Drake, in an interview with Chris Van Vliet, noted that he'd been doing so since 2015. To give that a little bit of perspective, in 2015, Knight was signed with Impact, and in 2017, during the time he was still working on WWE Games, he was also the TNA World Champion. Well, we call it that today, but he won it during that weird Global Force Wrestling merger that got botched. It was a weird time in TNA's history, but that's not the point. The point is, he had achieved success elsewhere, but was still working on WWE's video games. Wrestlers don't just motion capture the moves, they even do all the taunts and even entrances of your favourite WWE stars. For many years before he was signed, a common criticism of Eli Drake was that he was trying too hard to resemble The Rock or Stone Cold, especially in The Rock's promo style. How ironic then that LA Knight claims to have done the motion capture for The Rock's entrance for the 2K games. In the same interview, he also says he helped with the entrances for Triple H and Goldberg, among others. Perhaps most surprisingly, he has also claimed to have recreated R-Truth's entrance. When you watch this entrance in full, knowing that it's actually LA Knight, it's really impressive, to be fair. Knight has said that R-Truth's entrance is maybe the one he's most proud of. In a more recent interview with Van Vliet, Knight says he can't do mocap anymore, as his schedule doesn't allow it, but he clearly has fond memories of doing it. He also says in this interview that he even did some very basic animations for your character, such as getting up off the ring mat, but also that his entrance in the most recent games isn't even done by him. Another thing he says that's kind of cool is that the mocap talent get their entrances added to the game under a generic name, as something of an Easter egg. Some of these are old ones for characters from previous games, and others are a sort of nod to the mocap talent. So a genuine Eli Drake entrance exists in at least some of the 2K games he worked on. Number 2. Shane McMahon. As I mentioned earlier, seldom does a WWE star get to do their own motion capture, but according to a video from WWE's YouTube channel, Shane requested to do his own ahead of 2K18 because his kids played the games and thought his animations were a bit off. I hope LA Knight didn't do them and hear that diss from Shane's kids, by the way. In this feature video, we get to see Shane performing not just his own moves like the coast to coast and those really shite punches, but also slams and suplexes too. Honestly, if I were one of the mocap guys in that studio and Shane McMahon is in my ring, I'd be getting him to do all kinds of moves he has no business doing, from Destinos to triple jump moonsaults. Hell, I'd even get him to try a 630, because you know he's going to try it. Safely, of course. I'd assume they use crash mats when possible. All of this amounts to Shane McMahon being the most authentic character to play as in a WWE game. Weirdly. Lead cutscene animator Shane McPherson noted that when you choose to play as Shane McMahon, you are actually playing as Shane. And that reminded me of the upcoming game, The Wrestling Code, which has been in development for a fair while now. They've embarked on an insane sounding mission to personally mocap as much as their roster as they authentically can. That sounds like a truly ambitious project, and I hope it works out for them. That's not an ad, by the way. Number 3. Jordan Grace and Chris Bay. I'm putting these two together as they're both currently members of the TNA roster. I say currently, because we still don't know what those hourglass tweets meant a while back, which tells you how long ago I wrote this. Earlier this year, the TNA Knockouts champion made headlines by being one of the absolute highlights of the 2024 Royal Rumble event. But that's not her first work for WWE technically. When a Twitter user commented that Ivy Nile resembles the result of a union between Grace and Scott Steiner, Grace responded with the fact that she animated Nile's entrance for 2K23. Chris Bay has also been credited with work on a few 2K games, but the story that caught my eye was that he did at least some of the mocap for 2K22, which had a showcase mode dedicated to the career of Rey Mysterio. Bay has on Twitter noted that the move he's most proud of recreating is the famous moonsault into a DDT from Rey's match with Eddie Guerrero at Halloween Havoc 97, a move that will always be linked with those two legends. Bay noted on Twitter that it took him 4 takes to perfect the move, but perfect it he did. This move from one of WCW's most famous cruiserweight matches ever appears to be an Xbox PS trophy, yeah that's it, for some wrestlers to unlock. One such wrestler is Ricochet, who once performed it in a match with Rey Mysterio himself for What Culture Pro Wrestling in Leeds, England, a match I attended live by the way. Afterwards, Ricochet made it known just how much it meant to him to recreate that move with Rey himself. Number 4. Austin Aries. For this one, we go pre-2K to WWE 12, and while Aries did motion capture work too, this is more about his voice. For WWE 12, the former Ring of Honor and TNA World Champion Aries lent his voice to that game's fictional player insert character, Jacob Cass. If you didn't know who Austin Aries was, this wouldn't have mattered to you at all, but as a TNA and ROH fan, it was truly bizarre to hear A-Double's voice coming out of a created character. Jacob Cass represents the first time an assigned voice and personality was given to your created character in a career mode, rather than you just being a current WWE star, or being on your own journey as a mute character who would awkwardly never be mentioned by name. In years later, 2K would create their own characters that would eventually return in later games. Frankly, the likes of El Mago, Cole Quinn, and later El Mago Jr. would be commonly used as jobbers in my exhibition matches in these games. To my mind, and this is just my opinion, them being original characters taking up roster spots is only slightly better than umpteen versions of the same wrestler that are caused by the showcase mode in recent 2K games. Looking at you 2K20, with your 4 Baileys and your 3 Becky Lynches and 5 Charlottes and 4 Sasha Bankses. Also for fairness, 2K22 and 3 with your million versions of Rey Mysterio and John Cena. Getting back on track here to Austin Aries, he would later be signed to WWE, where he would work on NXT and later 205 Live, and also for a brief time on Level Up. That bit's nowhere near true, but I thought if I said it no one would know. He would even appear as himself, this time as DLC, in WWE 2K17. Less than a year later, Aries would be released in July 2017, which was first reported to be because he wasn't happy in his role, seeing himself as being above the Cruiserweight division. A PW Torch source around that time claimed Aries was released for being a massive headache for everyone who had to work with him, even stating he had a bad attitude, which was his reputation long before he went to WWE by the way, and maybe why you don't see him very often these days, with his last match for a major promotion being for NWA 2 years ago. Imagine how bad your reputation has to be for Billy Corgan to push white powder over you. Number 5. The Young Bucks. This entry is slightly different, as the Bucks of Youth might not have actually worked on a 2K game, but an article I found from Uprocks tells a kind of interesting story. Back in 2017, they along with the Bullet Club might have been one of the hottest groups in wrestling. A month previous to what I'm getting into, the Bucks, as well as Cody Rhodes, Hangman Page and Redacted, showed up in a car park outside WWE Raw. Bullet Club caused such a stir that WWE eventually sent them a cease and desist letter to stop them using the NWO's famous Too Sweet hand gesture. What does any of this have to do with WWE Games? Well, the Uprocks article references a report in the Wrestling Observer saying that the very next day after the Bucks received their cease and desist letter, they received an invitation from 2K Games to provide motion capture work for 2K18. According to Meltzer, the 2K video game people asked them to work on motion captures, actual quote, for next year's game because people in last year's game were using the Create a Wrestler mode to play as the Young Bucks, and they felt they needed to get all their signature moves into the game. Jesus, Dave learned how to structure a sentence. Dave also notes that the Bullet Club Funko Pops were coming to Hot Topic soon. Another excuse for me to play this. Hot Topic is not punk rock! Whether the Bucks took this offer up, I don't know, but I distinctly remember their old finishing sequence, More Bang for Your Buck, and later the Meltzer driver being added to WWE Games through DLC. When I was looking for footage of these moves for this video, I noticed that both More Bang for Your Buck and the Meltzer driver were included as part of the Moves Pack DLC for 2K15, as evidenced by these clips by YouTuber SmackTalks. Given how these moves, especially the final moonsault in More Bang, were performed, it's fair to say the Bucks didn't mocap these, but maybe 2K wanted more polished versions for their later games. 2K15 was, to be fair, long before the peak of the Bullet Club, as well as the Young Bucks' fame. This story got me thinking about something I'd never considered before. Community creations must allow 2K a fascinating look at what WWE wrestlers people want to create most. This might be why certain moves, like Will Ospreay's Butterfly Lifting Twist Cutter, were added as DLC into other games. Given that as I'm making this video Will Ospreay is in AEW, we might never see a genuine Stormbreaker or Os Cutter in a WWE game. We might see one in Fight Forever though, come about 2032. Thank you for watching yet another wrestling channel. If you enjoyed this, please consider leaving a comment, clicking like or subscribing.